Welcome, fellow Toastmasters, and a warm welcome to our North Metro audience. Thank you for joining us. We are Toastmasters Live, and we meet every second and fourth Tuesday of every month. The theme of this meeting is Christmas time. Christmas is such a unique holiday. With the Christmas specials that are on TV, hearing on the radio all the Christmas songs, and the lights everywhere, trees, buildings, houses. It's also a time to gather around with your family. Today's word of the day is confabulate. It's a verb that means to converse informally, chat. I'm sure many of you will be confabulating with your family during Christmas. I have an unusual situation occurring in my home this Christmas. I'm a single parent right now, separated from my wife. I have two sons, Aviance, age 19, and Johnny, age 12, living with me. Aviance came into my home when he was 4 years of age, and we had contact with the biological mother, Chantel, but Thanksgiving was the first time that I had spent significant time with Chantel. We had an open adoption. My wife and I thought it would be best that the boys maintain a relationship with their older siblings. These siblings live up in Duluth, and oftentimes we went up there, but Chantel wasn't really around because she was struggling with her own addictions. But fortunately, she's cleaned up her life now. Anyway, my wife stopped by on Thanksgiving and invited Chantel and her 8-year-old back to my house for Christmas. A little weird since she's not living there now, but I didn't mind. My family won't be around this Christmas, and Chantel doesn't really have too many good options. My son, Aviance, welcomes Chantel in his life. Now I need to do some shopping for an 8-year-old boy and a 40-year-old woman in addition to shopping for my boys. But again, I don't mind. But I came across an interesting statistic. According to a blogger, Tim Urban, by the time you graduate from high school, you'll have used 93% of your in-person parent time. That means only 7% of your in-person parent time remains. That's assuming everyone lives to the age 90, which of course we all don't. Similarly, with siblings, by the time you graduate from high school, you've used up 85% of your in-person time. You have just 15% left, especially if they don't live nearby. In his blog post entitled The Tail End, Tim has 3 takeaways. 1, living in the same place as the people you love matters. 2, priorities matter. And 3, quality time matters. Don't let petty things keep you from spending time with your family. Just something to think about for this Christmas season. Now on to the rest of the meeting. First, we have our prepared speech. Steve will be giving a speech tonight. And then the next part of our meeting, we'll have table topics. And this is where the table topics master will ask questions to members, and each member has 1 to 2 minutes to speak extemporaneously regarding the question. This develops our ability to think on our feet. Finally, the meeting will have the evaluation portion, in which the speech evaluator gives 2 to 3 minutes in giving encouraging and constructive feedback regarding the prepared speech given. Then the general evaluator gives his evaluation of the meeting as a whole. So with that, we go into our first speaker, Steve Compton. Steve Compton is a storyteller. He loves to read for others and will be doing project number 1 from the Toastmasters Advanced Communication Manual, Interpretive Reading. The project involves reading material written by someone else and in process of the reading, interpreting the story. In this project, Steve has selected a lovely seasonal story he will share. Wherever you are, as the story unfolds, relax, enjoy, and let the reading and the words give you a break from the busyness of this holiday season. Please welcome Steve with his speech entitled Christmas Pageant.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and North Metro guests. For years now, whenever Christmas pageants are talked about in a certain little town in the Midwest, someone is sure to mention the name of Wallace Perling. Wally's performance in one annual production of the Nativity play has slipped into the realm of legend. But the old-timers who were in the audience that night never tire of recalling exactly what happened. Wally was 9 that year and in the 2nd grade, though he should have been in the 4th. Most people in town knew that he had difficulty keeping up. He was big and clumsy, slow in movement and mind. Still, Wally was well liked by the other children in his class, all of whom were smaller than he, though the boys had trouble hiding their irritation if the uncoordinated Wally asked to play ball with them. Most often, they'd find some way to keep him off of the field, but Wally would hang around anyway, not sulking, just hoping. He was always a helpful boy, a willing and smiling one, the natural protector, paradoxically, of the underdog. Sometimes if the older boys chased the younger ones away, it would be Wally who'd say, "Can't they stay? They're no bother." Well, Wally fancied the idea of being a shepherd with a flute in the Christmas pageant that year. But the play's director, Miss Lombard, assigned him a more important role. After all, she reasoned, the innkeeper didn't have too many lines, and Wally's size would make his refusal of lodging to Joseph more forceful. And so it happened that the large partisan audience gathered for the town's Yuletide extravaganza of staffs and creches, of beards, crowns, and halos, and a whole stage full of squeaky voices. No one on stage or off was more caught up in the magic of that night than Wallace Perling. They said later that he stood in the wings and watched the performance with such fascination that from time to time Miss Lombard had to make sure he didn't wander on stage before his cue. Then the time came. Joseph appeared, slowly, tenderly guiding Mary to the door of the inn. Joseph knocked hard on the wooden door, set into the painted backdrop. Wally, the innkeeper, was there waiting. "What do you want?" Wally said, swinging the door open in a brusque gesture. "We seek lodging." "Seek it elsewhere." Wally looked straight ahead but spoke vigorously. "The inn is filled." "Sir, we have asked everywhere in vain. We have traveled far and are very weary." "There is no room for you in this inn." Wally looked properly stern. "Please, good innkeeper, this is my wife Mary. She is heavy with child and needs a place to rest. Surely you must have a small corner for her. She is so tired." Now, for the first time, the innkeeper relaxed his stiff stance. He looked down at Mary. With that, there was a long pause. Long enough to make the audience a bit tense with embarrassment. "No, be gone," the prompter whispered from the wings. "No," Wally repeated automatically. "Be gone." Joseph sadly placed his arm around Mary, and Mary laid her head upon his shoulder, and the two of them started to move away. The innkeeper did not, however, return to his inn. Wally stood there in the doorway, watching the forlorn couple. His mouth was open, his brow was creased, his concern obvious, his eyes filling unmistakably with tears. "Don't go, Joseph," Wally called out. "Bring Mary back." And Wallace Perling's face grew bright with a smile. "You can have my room." Some people in town thought that the pageant had been ruined. Yet there were others, many others, who considered it the most Christmas of all Christmas pageants they had ever seen. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Steve. It's always nice to hear a nice Christmas tale. Now we're going to move on to our table topic session of the meeting, so we'll take a few moments here to get set up for that. So I know it's kind of tough.
Hi, I'm Sherry Jacobson. Tonight I will be the Table Topics Master, and I will give 3 lucky Toastmaster members the opportunity to speak off the cuff. I'm going to ask them questions. They have no idea what the questions are. They will, however, reflect our theme of the evening, which is Christmas. And I'm sorry, we had people talking there. That's okay. I will ask these questions and give these lucky people an opportunity to answer. Christmas is almost among us. For me, Christmas is a time for friends, family, and reflection. Now, when I was about 10 years old, that Christmas, I wanted a horse. I begged my mother from almost the whole year asking for a horse. Told her I wanted nothing else but a horse. I even went to the stable that was nearest to our house and talked to them about how much it would be and if there was availability. Then I got a list and pictures of horses that were available that I found in the paper with my list of number 1, number 2, and number 3. Christmas Eve came. I knew I would find a saddle underneath that tree. The next morning, I didn't sleep, and when it was 6 o'clock in the morning, I raced out there to find a pogo stick. Okay, this was so disappointing. This was the most disappointing Christmas, my most memorable Christmas ever. I still think about it every Christmas, and this has been a number of years ago. So my question for you, George, is what is your most memorable Christmas?
Madam Topics Master. Well, I'm going back about 70 Christmases, so before age 10, I wasn't sure. I think that the very first time that made a difference in my life was the Christmas that I drove from San Antonio, Texas, back to Livingston, New Jersey, in order to have Christmas Eve dinner with the family. My grandparents on my father's side were from the old country, and back then in the 1950s, it was traditional Christmas Eve dinner of the 7 dried foods, which did not include meat, because that's the way the Catholics were back then. But what it made it memorable was that there was 31 members of the Della Duca family around the table with that 7 dried foods down in the basement. And I drove up just about 6 o'clock in the evening with my wife, and we knocked on the door, we walked in, and we walked downstairs, and it was memorable. That's for absolutely sure.
Thank you. That was a great story. Just so that you know, about 5 years later, boys, and it didn't matter. Christmas traditions. Ever since I can remember, my favorite Christmas tradition is watching A Christmas Carol. I think I've seen every movie, TV show, play done of the Christmas Carol. My favorite is the 1938 version of A Christmas Carol. And right now I have 2 versions being recorded this month on my DVR. So, Dan, what is your favorite Christmas tradition?
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. When I think about memories of my favorite tradition, it would have to be when I was a young kid. Every year that we had Christmas, we celebrated. We went down to my grandparents' farm, hobby farm, that was down in Northfield, Minnesota. So it was something we did every year. And I remember we celebrated on Christmas Eve rather than Christmas Day, so it was usually in the evening. And I remember that we always had our traditional Christmas dinner. And one of the things I remember is our home was Norwegian background. They would have lutefisk going. I can't think of any smell that's worse than lutefisk. And so I remember smelling that every time, but that was something they had every year. And my dad liked it, my grandparents liked it, but I never ate it. But I remember just having the traditional Swedish meatballs. We had lefse, and we just had our traditional meal. Then we cleaned up afterwards. All the dishes had to be washed, hand washed, and put away. And then after that, we sat down. We opened our gifts. I remember after that, we would gather around the piano. My grandmother played the piano, and we'd sing different hymns. And I just remember how enjoyable that was. And unfortunately, my grandma at that time, she really couldn't sing anymore. She lost it, but she still could play the piano. And it was just a very enjoyable experience. So that's my favorite tradition. Back to you, Madam Table Topics Master.
After Christmas is New Year's Eve. Last year, my New Year's resolution was to practice kindness and treat people how I would want to be treated. And I think by April, it became a habit. I'm going to go with that same resolution this year, just because I think that we kind of tend to slide a little bit, and there's nothing more fulfilling for me than to see the smile on someone's face because I did something nice for them. Tyler, do you have a New Year's resolution for this coming year?
Thank you, Sherry. So this past year, I started practicing yoga quite frequently, as I shared in one of my speeches 2 meetings ago, I believe. And I've found out that in yoga, you're supposed to set intentions instead of resolutions, which for some might be an easy way of getting out of something you're supposed to accomplish. But for me, the difference between a resolution and an intention is that a resolution is you either fail or you succeed, and an intention is more broad or general. So my intention for this new year is to be more present in the moment. Steps I can take to accomplish that intention might include not worrying so much about the future or about the things of the past, and making more time for myself and for the people I care about. That's my intention for 2018.
Thank you. Well, that is all the questions that I have for today. Everyone, please, happy holidays. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sherry, for that table topic session. Now we're on to our final section of our meeting, the evaluation portion. And for that, I want to call up Tyler to run that portion of our meeting. Tyler?
Thank you, Dan. So as general evaluator, it's my job to first make sure that all of the roles are assigned for tonight, and also to give my general evaluation report of the meeting as a whole. I'll give my report now. I think that we had a great meeting tonight. The topic of the evening jam was very timely and very relatable and approachable. Everyone can relate to this time of year, especially up here in the north where Christmas is a special time to huddle on inside and stay warm. I thought that you did a great job segueing throughout the different parts of the meeting, that you started off with a great story from your past about your special family tradition, Christmas traditions. And I liked how you explained the context of the different meeting roles and the different points and purposes of those roles. It's helpful for someone that's a new Toastmasters or someone that's a new member or new viewer. I thought that Stephen had a really compelling story to share with us tonight of the Christmas pageant. He displayed a very, very strong ability in his vocal variety to fluctuate his vocal variety and inflection to draw in the audience. I did have one note of feedback to offer, and that would be perhaps because it was a reading and he was following word for word, this could be an opportunity in the future if he's to do another interpretive reading to actually use the teleprompter. That way he doesn't have to be looking down at the manual or book that he's reading, and he keep his eye focused closer to the audience. I think that's one time when we would maybe want to consider using the teleprompter. Generally, we don't like to use the teleprompter here at Toastmasters because we like to use more impromptu speaking, but I think for an interpretive reading, a teleprompter may be a good opportunity. But again, as I mentioned, great inflection and also really strong inflection and vocal variety during your dialogue parts. You would throw your voice or create a different character for the audience by using different vocal variety in your dialogue through your story. Overall, I thought we had a great meeting. We are a little bit ahead of schedule due to the fact that we only have one speaker, and we did have a few members canceled at the last moment, so we had to rearrange some roles, but we were as proactive with that as we could be. At this point in time, I'll turn it back over to Sherry Jacobson, who will give her speech evaluation of Steve's speech. Sherry?
Steve, you did a wonderful job. I thought it was a perfect story for tonight's theme. The purpose of this talk was for the speaker to present a narrative using vocal techniques that help the audience to understand and enjoy the selection. The speaker was to convey the author's meaning and emotions. And it was suggested that he read the entire presentation. The theme was very understandable and had a clear storyline. I loved how the rate of speech that you used throughout the speech gave emphasis to different parts, and also your vocal variety in the different characters, using different voices for different characters, also brought the story to life. It drew us in. Your eye contact, you gave great eye contact to our audience, plus the camera. Your introduction was great, and again, the story was very timely. You were spontaneous during the speech by the voice inflection and your facial expressions. If I had anything to say, maybe critique, that would be maybe a little more use of the stage. I like Tyler's idea about the teleprompter, and maybe some more body language. That would be the only thing that I could even offer. It's obvious that you are a very well polished speaker, and I hope that you continue to give us speeches here at Toastmasters Live. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. So tonight we listened to Steve tell a very engaging and entertaining story. We had a wonderful session of table topics, and our evaluation team provided the essential feedback that's needed for every meeting. Well, that wraps up the show for today. As I mentioned, we meet the second and fourth Tuesday of every month here at North Metro. We welcome visitors at any time. I especially encourage anyone in our viewing audience that is currently a Toastmaster to come visit our club and experience the meeting with professional quality cameras and audio. Recording yourself on video allows you, as painful as it may seem, to evaluate how you come off as a speaker. Seeing yourself and getting the written and oral feedback from another Toastmaster can help you grow as a speaker. In addition, there are technical roles such as director, soundboard, and camera operators that give you valuable experience into the technical aspects of producing video. So I encourage you to come see for yourself here at North Metro Cable every second and fourth Tuesday of the month from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. However, I do want to note that for this month in December, we will not meet on the fourth Tuesday because of the Christmas holiday. So until then, good evening from Toastmasters Live in Blaine, Minnesota.